Good morning. I'm Jim Hathaway, principal at JTech. We have an intense focus on driving RPA solutions both across our federal and commercial customers. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the moderator for the next panel, Mr. Edward Burrows, Vice President of Intelligence Solutions, Brilliant Corporation, and previously RPA Manager at GSA. Please join me in welcoming Edward Burrows to the stage.
Thank you, Jim. So, excellent presentations this morning. So many great points about RPA. Nobody had a joke about bots on Halloween. So, I don't think there are any such jokes, so I had to make one up. So, how do you think bots are like the undead? Zombies. Doesn't seem obvious. They're both bloodless. They both run around at night in unattended mode. And some people are afraid of them. So there you have it.
That's a good one.
But they're not that much alike. We have to give bots their due. They're much less troublesome and more productive. So anytime we have an event about RPA, there are certain topics that always come up, never fail. What are examples of use cases? How do you identify high-value opportunities? How do you implement bots? What are the people-related implications of RPA? And finally, what is artificial intelligence and intelligent automation exactly, and how does that relate to RPA? So I'm very happy to say that this panel is built to answer all those questions. We have, starting off with the use cases and opportunity identification, we have Elizabeth McIntyre of DoD, Alicia Salcedo of GSA, representing the process owners. Both are really passionate about RPA. It's very, very clear discussing it with them. They're excited. It's very important to have leadership in the government supporting RPA so you can build your program. But the action is really at the level of the people who are operating the processes. They can see the benefit, they can understand it. So there's a lot of bottom-up influence that's happening with RPA. Margaret Moon is an experienced RPA project manager with the National Science Foundation. She'll tell us about the delivery part. Michael Regas is OPM is here to speak about the people-related aspects. And Sukumar Iyer of Brilliant Corporation is an expert in intelligent automation and artificial intelligence. So let's get started with Elizabeth. Elizabeth McIntyre is an accountant with DoD, where she leads financial improvement and audit remediation efforts. She advocates RPA implementation to standardize business processes, support audit success, and free up resources to focus on value-added activities. And I'll also say that Gerard spoke about the RPA community of practice. Elizabeth is one of our leaders in the credentialing area. She contributed some content on audit to that section of the playbook. And also Margaret is a co-leader in the development area in the COP. Elizabeth,
yes.
Over to you.
Thanks. Good morning. So a little bit about my background. I've worked for USACE, for the Army Corps of Engineers, for over 10 years. And as everyone knows, DoD as a whole does not have a clean opinion, but USACE has had one since 2007. So when I was there, I heard about RPA, and I kind of thought about some of the processes that my team in the financial statement compilation, what we were doing, that wasn't really value added. I think a big part of stewardship is that the taxpayers are paying accountants to do accounting work, and when we're spending a lot of time on keying in data and downloading things and uploading things, that's not what we're being paid for. And a bot can solve that, and it can also do it more accurately than human beings. So if you miskey one number as a human, you have to start all over because your debits don't equal your credits, but a bot doesn't do that. A bot can run and you come in and your stuff's uploaded, you're ready to start doing the analysis and the journal vouchers and things. So I got really excited about it while I was at the Corps. I spent about a year researching and talking to like our audit partner at KPMG. What would y'all think? Is this something you'd be comfortable if we started using? And they were somewhat interested. I talked to our CIO, is this something that's on your radar? And it wasn't. They were getting just into like looking at data analytics and things like that. RPA was nowhere on their radar. So I left, came up to DC to work for OSD, and I quickly found out that we were standing up a kind of bot community of practice. And luckily the person that is in charge of it, Erica, who you'll get to hear from later, she works in my office. And so Mr. Greg Little introduced me to her, and the first thing I said is, can you build me a bot? And she said, I can. And so one of the things that our team and the fire directorate was doing is we have to do quality control. We have to dig into the financial statements that each of the DoD components are preparing and try to determine, like, you know, where could we improve this. But that meant every quarter we had a whole team of GS 13, 14s, and 15s dropping what they were doing to log into DDRS and generate reports and click those reports and drill down and put it in Excel files and send off emails. And it was just ridiculous. So that was the first thing that Erica's team said, yeah, let's find a way to automate that. It was a lot of fun working with her team and kind of outlining and figuring out how is this process going to work, how are we going to document it, what part, testing it, what part worked, what didn't, what can we improve upon. We've been using it for the last 2 quarters, and it saves us so much time, and it's standardized. It's just been a dream. And now within our suite, we have 4 different directorates, and I'm kind of like the cheerleader for it. Like anybody I hear about who's spending a lot of time drilling down on anything or just any type of non-value added activity where they really need to be focused on the audit or their other work streams, I'm a champion. Let me come sit with you. Let me see you do it. Let me write this down. How can we standardize this? And then once they get that process standardized, then we kind of let loose and let Erica's team do all the fun stuff of it. So that's kind of where I sit. I work for the Financial Improvement and Audit Remediation Directorate, so I'm very into the audit. I want to be in the Pentagon the day that we get a clean opinion for DoD. It's going to take a lot of work, but we have got a ton of really good financial managers, and they are all really committed. And I think as the whole department embraces RPA and begins to implement it in other areas, I think it's just going to free up resources like crazy. And it's also going to standardize, and we're going to have audit trails, and I'm very excited about the potential. So that's kind of my background. And
thanks,
right.
Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Next, Alicia Saucedo worked with GSA since 1993. In 2015, she was named the director of the CFO Office's Regional Financial Operations Division, covering New England, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Midwest. In this role, she administers the comprehensive regional financial management program and advises senior regional officials on all public building service budget-related matters. She also leads new opportunity identification for the CFO Office RPA program. I think that last bit is an understatement. She's prolific in identifying opportunities, certainly. And her theme is going to be opportunities, challenges, and impacts.
Yes, hi. So I'm Alicia Saucedo. I'm with GSA. We heard from Gerard this morning, so you might hear some similar themes, but hopefully from a different perspective. So I'm going to talk a little bit, give a quick overview of the robotics process automation journey at GSA. GSA started working on robotics probably almost 2 years ago, about 2 years, maybe just shy of 2 years ago. The early months were spent training a cohort of in-house developers, and standing up our process for implementing robotics projects. And so after we did that, then we're ready for ideas, right? And ideas is kind of a hot topic recently. Where do you look for them? How do you generate them? How do you find really good ones? So we went about generating ideas and looking for ideas in a couple of different ways at GSA. One of the ways I'll highlight, you may have heard of this before, we implemented an initiative called EOA. E is eliminate, O is optimize, and A is automate. We sent out a survey to a few of our GSA offices and got responses back. And what we found in those responses is that many of these ideas were centered around our systems, right? So at GSA, we've got, obviously we have a financial system, we've got acquisition systems, and on the PDS side, there's inventory management system, a system to manage leases, several project management systems, billing systems. Anyways, you get the idea. And around each of these systems, there's actually a significant amount of data entry. Some of our systems are integrated with each other and talk to each other, but they are not all integrated, which, by the way, I think that RPA is a really good, it can be a long-term solution for some system integration. You know, I think a barrier to having our systems integrated and talking to each other is cost, time, and even sometimes the capability of some of these legacy systems. So I will just say that I think RPA is really good. It can be a long-term solution to some of these system integration issues. So I think that was a big theme in terms of the responses that we got back and where these ideas were coming from, a lot around our systems, getting information in there, you know, and that. The second, I think, big theme in terms of the responses that we got and ideas is around our data. So again, you know, not a surprise, but data accuracy, data reconciliation. I mean, we've had this, you know, manual data entry process for so long, so you have data issues where the same information in one system doesn't match the other. So that was a big topic. So data reconciliation, accuracy, quality control, and cleanup. And then I think the third area where we got a lot of ideas is like these repetitive notifications. So sending out notices to people to remind them to do things, or for compliance issues or what have you. So there was ideas around those. So those were, I would group those into the three big topics of the ideas that we got from this, this process that we used. And then we set out to implement these ideas. We got all these good ideas, we set out to implement them. So that brings me to the next topic, challenges. Okay, so if you read RPA articles, they all say that technology will not be your biggest challenge in implementing RPA. People are, and it's true, you know, people in organization really is the biggest challenge when it comes to implementing RPA projects. So I would recommend that you really engage at multiple levels in the organization. RPA projects are really just like a big change management project because it's, you know, changes the way you do your process. So I think that you need engagement and buy-in at the leadership level in your organization so that they'll support RPA projects, support the process changes that are inevitably going to come with those projects, and provide the subject matter expert resources that you need that are key in process optimization like this. But that alone is not enough. You also really need to engage at the working level, you know, throughout the working level. Because this is where your ideas are going to come from. And they are, your subject matter experts at the working level are integral in developing future state processes and implementing them and doing things that make sense for your organization. So, you know, it's really important. Like any change management effort, you just simply cannot communicate too much. And then that brings me to the third point, impacts. So I just thought I would share maybe some project specifics. This maybe can help you get ideas for your organization. So I'll talk about some of our bots that have been real workhorses here at GSA. So one of the first bots that we made that is recently coming on its 1-year birthday or anniversary was a bot that completely transformed our micro purchase process at GSA. So micro purchases are what they sound like. They're high volume, low dollar transactions. And before RPA, all of these transactions would have to be hand keyed into the financial system. And so one of our first projects, and it's definitely been one of the biggest so far, is where we automated all of the data entry for those micro purchases into the financial system. So the people that are involved in that micro purchase process no longer have to hand key that stuff into the financial system. So that was a really big deal for us. I think we're really proud of that project. Another big workhorse bot project that we did, again, almost a year ago, is preparing receiving reports for recurring service contracts. So this bot faithfully runs once a month, prepares 800 receiving reports for CORs to review and accept. It is a huge time saver for the folks that work in this recurring service area at GSA PBS. The third example I'll give is in the area of accounts payable. We have a bot that sends out daily notices of invoices that are in need of receiving reports. So we had people that did this every day, just send out emails over and over again until the receiving reports come in, and now they don't have to do that. We have that all automated. So that's a big volume bot. And then our youngest bot, it just went live on Monday, but I think it's really impressive, is a bot that we have to do administrative modifications in our acquisition system. So we developed this bot to come up with a solution for the 889 clause, that cybersecurity clause that has to go in many of our contracts, so that GSA could be compliant. And that bot has been running every night since Monday. It won't stop running until it generates 8,000 administrative mods with the 889 clause. So every morning, every night it sends an administrative modification to a contracting officer for them to approve and sign the next day. So those are some impacts, some of our bots, and I hope that that can help you maybe generate some ideas in your organization, or help you think about robotics in your own organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. I want to say something about the last use case. I think that's really important because Gerard mentioned earlier we started off with a 100-day goal, and it was in fact aggressive. We had nothing at GSA. This one in particular, the business came to us and said, we have to meet this audit requirement, we have to do all these modifications, and we have a deadline. So they were motivated, they were all ready. That project, beginning to end, was 45 days. So I think that's a milestone because that shows what you can do if you have a customer who's ready, prepared, and wants to get it done. 45 days. So that's what RPA can do. It's a benchmark, I think, going forward.
Yeah, thank
you. Next, Margaret Moon, currently financial systems analyst at the National Science Foundation with a CPA, CISA, and PMP. She has over 26 years of experience ranging from financial auditing, systems auditing, program auditing, implementing internal controls, and implementing financial, HR, and IT systems. She is currently the RPA project manager for the NSF's Division of Financial Management, and she also just completed the Marine Corps Marathon. So, and she sent us a photo, and she's slogging through this water. It must have been, I don't know, 6 inches deep. It was unbelievable.
Up to me.
Right. And not only that, she ran a 50-mile race also recently. So well done, Margaret.
Good morning. So I was asked to speak about what I wish that
For your slides, use the green button.
that I had was surprised to see about RPA. And really, I think what people don't understand is that RPA is a software management project. It's an implementation of a software project. So you need a project plan, you need to define the requirements. The requirements are defined in the process design document by the business process owner along with the developer. And then you have the technical solution, which is defined or documented in the solution design document. You need to do testing, and then you have to have a rollout and a support model. And key to all of that is communication, because people are afraid, or people are afraid of the unknown. So once you define or you describe this and you demonstrate what an RPA is, how it works, actually what we had our business process owners so excited about it, they couldn't wait for it to get out. But then you ask them, well, we need to have all your click level documentation. Some people had that and we're rolling along with them, and other people did not have that, and they need to define that. So just to go back to Gerard's intro, that's part of that factory. You need to have the documentation to push that along down the factory line. The difference between an RPA and other system implementations, in my opinion, is really the impact. Generally, depending on the automation, it involves fewer people. It's or in your organization, like what the person is actually doing, and it really just impacts the person that does that task or the people that do that task. The scale. It's generally not an entire system implementation, but it is a task level replacement. And then time to production. Theoretically, it's an agile project, something that can be done in 2 to 3 months, depending obviously on the scale and the enthusiasm of the participants in seeing this into production. And another thing that I was asked to discuss was how could we get automations faster into production. And I think these are the key 3 things that I thought. Really the technical environment, the development, the test, the production environment, they need to be set up the same, identical, so that when you move the code along, you don't find new problems. Something that we are looking at right now is a mix of attended and unattended bots. There are some processes that are more better suited for an unattended bot, like a report generation or entering modifications for a course to go and approve the next day, or reminder emails. And then there are some where you need interaction with an accountant or a business process owner. And then I think the third key to developing or to rolling out bots quicker is to have dedicated developers. So when somebody is doing that part-time, they're only going to give it part-time effort. Whereas if you have somebody working on a task or a development project, that might take them 2 weeks or a week, right, to write the documentation and actually do the development, do the testing, because that's all they're focused on. They might get sidelined with like a production issue support task, but generally they're not doing production half the day or 6 hours a day and then development 2 hours at the end of the day. So those are some things that I think that agencies could improve on or can think about when they're rolling out their bot program.
Thank you, Margaret. So we've heard about use cases, identifying opportunities, delivery. What about the people who are involved in this, the people whose tasks are being automated? Michael Regas is Deputy Director of the Office of Personnel Management. He has a proven record of improving organizational performance and streamlining operations. He has served twice as an appointee at the GSA, where he worked to increase federal government contracting and improved his department's scorecard from red to green. Mr. Regas also served as Chief of Staff at the Massachusetts Department of Veterans Services and at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. Prior to his career in public service, he worked in the private sector at Mellon Financial Corporation and Brown Brothers Harriman and Company. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think we've had some great use cases here demonstrated by Elizabeth and Alicia and Margaret on the panel here. And what I'm going to speak to a little bit is how do we bring these excellent cases enterprise-wide so that other agencies can learn from and replicate these same kinds of changes, and how do we deal with the personnel and the human capital component of all these changes. I apologize for my voice. I'm fighting a cold, which bots never get colds. So a lot of what we're doing here really flows from the President's management agenda, and so the three key pillars of that are mission, service, and stewardship, and how do we execute more effectively and efficiently on our mission, and every agency has a different mission. How do we improve our customer service? Every agency has different customers that they're serving, and how can we be good stewards of taxpayer dollars so we are doing things in the most efficient and effective way possible. And the ways that we have devised in order, the three sort of key areas of focus that we've looked at for doing that are IT modernization, which we've heard a little bit about here, data accountability and transparency, and people, which is where OPM comes in, building a workforce for the 21st century. So we talked a little bit about robotic process automation and the improvements that that brings to different work groups and areas. You know, I think when some folks were unfamiliar with the term RPA, they think, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's coming to take their job, or they're, you know, that change is not going to be a positive thing for them. And I think part of what we're talking about in the community of practice that we have, working with other agencies as part of the PMA, is starting that communication process with employees from the very beginning of the process. You know, our analysis shows that really only 5% of jobs, probably in the federal government, are probably candidates for being fully automated. But the key one I want you to see here is the second circle on this chart here, which is 60% of the jobs, the occupations in the federal government, have only about 30% of their tasks are probably ready for automation. And one of the things I like to say is, you know, people like change as long as it's 70% the same. And so the good news for folks here, especially in that second circle, is things are going to be 70% the same. The only things that we are really looking that are really going to be subject to RPA are probably about 30% of the tasks on your jobs. And one of the ways I think I like to explain it is, if you think about how we all go online to, you know, order products or services or get things. When we go online, we have to, you know, how many times you have to enter your name and your address and your zip code and your phone number and your email address every single time you need to execute a transaction. Now that is a necessary part of what you do, because you're not going to get what you order unless that necessary information is in there. But that's not why you went to the Amazon website or whatever, you know, the Wayfair website, whatever website you went to. You didn't go there so you could enter that information. But most of you probably are already experiencing robotic process automation because your computer has probably saved your vital details. So when you go in there and you start typing your name, it asks you, do you want to enter this version of your name and address? And you hit yes, and all of a sudden, all of those fields have been entered. Now, you don't get up and say, oh my goodness, my job's been taken away from me. I'm not going to be able to order what I want from Amazon. You're happy because you click next and you get to what you really want to do, which is spend your money, and Amazon get really, you know, they get what they want, which is you spending more time doing what they want you to do, which is buying stuff. And so, I think, you know, Elizabeth had a great example of this over at DoD. You know, every time a human being is manually keying something, there is an opportunity for a manual data entry error. And this, of course, causes problems down the line, because then someone has to go figure out what went wrong and then go back and fix it, and that's just a huge inefficiency. So I think how we communicate about robotic process automation is very important to ensuring that we get buy-in with the workforce. So part of what we're doing, as I mentioned, is this community of practice areas, part of the President's management agenda, where OPM is working with agencies on their human resources components, their culture. Every agency has a different culture. How are we communicating change management and talking about the impacts of RPA? Like I said, you want to talk about the positive components, how this means your job is going to be more efficient, and you're going to have to do less of the things you don't want to do in your job and more of the things that you do want to do. This is just sort of a, well, I'll just skip over this. That's sort of a flow chart. It sort of gets down into the weeds of how we work with agencies to engage in all of these areas. People, of course, I'm the OPM guy, I'm the personnel person. So people obviously are the key to a successful adaptation, and we want to make sure as agencies are engaging in this process that that they're engaging not just in the business lines, because the folks who are working on the front line and the supervisors really understand what processes are ready for RPA and what processes they really just want to get off their plate so they can focus on the work that they really want to do. So engaging with them first is great, but you also want to make sure you're engaging with the other key components of your agency so that you don't run into administrative hurdles later. So you want to be engaging with your general counsel's office, your human capital office, your privacy office, your CIO's office. Just be like, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Do you guys see anything, any issues we need to address? And they'll probably say, yes, there's something we need to do, and you consider and you get them on board. And that makes everything go so much more smoothly, so you don't have problems on the back end when people are like, oh no, you got to wait 6, 8, 12 months until we do what we need to do here. We have 3 agencies. I won't go and get into the details of them here because I think we've had some great examples here that I was going to highlight, but the Department of Interior, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Internal Revenue Service. And the reason I picked these 3 agencies is they are 3 agencies that have very different missions, very different workforces, and they are all finding opportunities to engage in robotic process automation. So no one should really be saying, well, that's not really right for my workforce, or that's not really right for my mission, or that's not really right for my agency. I'm so much different than that agency or those guys. It's not really for us. It really is for us. If you look at what your processes are, there's opportunities everywhere. And lastly, I'll just close out. We have a number of tools available for agencies who want to engage in this process. OPM recently issued guidance for change management in the federal workforce. We have an executive playbook for workforce reshaping that helps folks at the senior levels on how they communicate and how they engage all aspects of their agency, and a reskilling toolkit for managers to be able to help guide them through this process and go through some of these steps I just talked about sort of at a high level. So those are on our website. You can just go to opm.gov or just go into Google. They're really great at this. If you want to go right to that page, just type in OPM, Accelerating the Gears of Transformation, and you'll find all of these resources on our website. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So that's a good overview of RPA. I think the criteria are fairly straightforward. Once you're aware of it, people can identify opportunities. When it comes to artificial intelligence, intelligent automation, it's not as obvious. I think we need some education. I think that many people in the government are probably performing work that would be candidates for AI. They're not aware of it. Their management is not aware of it. So in the continuing education here, we have Sukumar Iyer, CEO of Brilliant Corporation. Sukumar started Brilliant about a dozen years ago on his own. So it's been an impressive growth, and he's really been in the forefront of advancing intelligent automation in the government. So we're happy to hear from him today. Let me get I'll get it. There you go.
I think I'm going to stand for this, Ed, if you
Okay,
don't mind.
sure.
So before I start, by show of hands, how many here are with a federal agency? Wow, it's about 60%. Keep your hands up. How many have a bot or more in production? How many have pilot bots? Okay, great. So we have a lot of RPA practitioners here, so I'm not going to preach to the choir and talk more about RPA. We heard some impressive stories from my fellow panelists. But Ed asked me to talk about intelligent automation. So this picture on the screen is part of our intelligent automation playbook and primer. The playbook released yesterday, so it's hot off the presses. And please download a copy. A lot of work went into it. It has a Cliff Notes introduction. It's roughly a 30-page document. The Cliff Notes introduction is for executives who don't have time to read all that stuff. And if you're a practitioner, it's got 5 chapters on how you get ready for automation, what do you do, the pre-work, how do you get started, how do you identify opportunities, how do you select the software tools, how do you put it into production, and then what do you do afterwards? What happens now you have the automation running? People don't think about what happens afterwards. So we thought through the whole process, and it's all in the playbook. There's even a section with a template statement of work that a procurement officer, contracting officer could put out in an RFP. But we define, so I like to cut through the hype, and we like to go for simple definitions. So RPA is automating handwork. So click, click, type, type, Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste, etc. And head work is what drives intelligent automation. So as we all know, as we go through our daily work, we do some grunt work on a keyboard or mouse, and then we have to use our heads and make some decisions and reason through that decision before we make it. So that's intelligent automation. I came up with a conceptual example to explain what is this intelligent automation, because even the term AI is kind of nebulous. So let's give that a shot. So imagine if you have a use case where you have a lot of unstructured data. So RPA is very good with structured data, where you have rows and columns. Read an Excel spreadsheet, get a database query, do something with that information. RPA is pretty good at that. But as one of my clients at the IRS told me, 90% of the data at the IRS is unstructured, right? And I'm sure that's the case with every agency, because our world does not fall into rows and columns. It's mostly unstructured. So examples include thousands of pages of PDFs, thousands of pages of paper sheets that you digitize. It could involve forms. Every government agency uses forms. And forms are kind of semi-structured because they have box titles, and you kind of know what goes into it, right? So on your W-2, adjusted gross income has a certain meaning to it. That's semi-structured. Emails are semi-structured, but tweets are unstructured, right? So not to preach to the choir here, but let's say you have multiple ways of extracting content from unstructured data, whether it could be imaging, OCR, cognitive machine reading, which is also a form of AI, by the way, or it could even involve entry of information by citizens and by businesses into a web-based government system. So once you have that, you could extract out the salient information and pass it to an RPA bot that goes through a series and sequence of steps, such as taking information out of a form, running it against a government database, fetching back some information. And then then the bot stops. Then you have a human that looks at the output and has to make a decision, right? So you go through an intelligent reasoning process and you make a decision. Now, as you make those decisions, you could also have a machine learning model running in tandem where the user is entering those decisions into that model. So it learns as you go along. And finally, one day, the model might be able to make those decisions in lieu of a human being, right? So that's one form of intelligent automation. Then it could pass off the output from that decision to another RPA bot that goes through a sequence of events, does a bunch of other data fetches. Maybe it formats an output report, and then finally it presents it as to the requester, who might be a citizen. It could be a business. So examples include, for instance, if you go to irs.gov, and I use IRS because everybody files taxes, and they're also a long-term client of ours. Our tax law is exceedingly complex, right? So people often go to irs.gov to find answers, right? So imagine that there's a citizen going to irs.gov or a business, and you're asking questions in an unstructured manner. So the English language is so complicated, there are 47 ways of saying yes. So you can say yes, you can say okay, you can say yeah. These are just 3 examples, right? There's tons of them. All right. That's just one example of how you have to decipher what the user is asking in unstructured content, right? So cognitive machine reading and some level of machine learning is very useful in those. A great example of this kind of a use case scenario is also transactional systems like chatbots, virtual assistants, right? Sometimes people don't like to talk to people. I just want an answer. I just want to know, for example, in the year 1998, I was on a contract. Yeah, I'm older than I look. I was working at the IRS creating an application called Refund. And the idea was I filed my tax return. I know I'm getting a refund, but when is it coming? That's it. All I want is a date. I don't want to know anything else, right? So that is an IVR application, but that could be automated using something like this. So unstructured questions, unstructured content, you decipher what it is that the user wants. You can use RPA to fetch the data. A human can make a decision saying, is this right or wrong? Is this an LLP or an LLC? Depending on which the answer is different. And then you present the data back. And then you can also use machine learning for end-to-end analytics. What kind of questions are people asking? And what kind of responses are we giving back to citizens, right? So let me also say that we all use the term bots. We are at the bots forum, right? But I actually have an article called AI for Federal Government, which I expect to be published soon, where there's really no bots. There's no robots, right? So DoD has some unmanned systems. DoD is working on robot soldiers. But outside of that, for the rest of us, these bots are just software programs. They often do what you want them to do, and they often do what you hope that they will do, because AI can go wrong as well, right? So I'm guilty of using the term bots. I'm guilty of using a bot-like icon, but there's no such thing as bots. It's just simple software programs. And I use that to cut through the hype and explain, and I think Margaret made the same point, to explain to people that there's no reason to get anxious about Terminator or Arnold Schwarzenegger showing up and filling you up with holes, right? So that's a conceptual example. There are many examples of how intelligent automation is RPA++. So think of it in that fashion. A little plug for the ACT-IAC Intelligent Automation Working Group. So we started this group 2 or 3 years ago when RPA was in its infancy. Rather than calling it the RPA Working Group, we decided to call it the Intelligent Automation Working Group. We wanted to lean forward into the future. And our mission is to help federal agencies to learn what are these things, what is RPA, what is intelligent automation, assess problems that can be solved, and then implement solutions, the entire life cycle. And there are plenty of synergies with the government's RPA community of practice as well. In fact, we hope they will use some content from our playbook and vice versa. The community of practice is mainly federal agencies. Our working group is federal agencies plus industry, so you get the benefit of both. We've had 2 deliverables so far. We published a primer late last year, about 10 pages. You just want to know quickly what is AI, what is RPA, what's intelligent automation. It tells that story. And then we published the playbook yesterday. So I would highly recommend talk to the ACT-IAC folks, try to see if you can get a copy of the playbook. We meet every 30 minutes on every second Thursday, and we are seeking more members from federal agencies. So if you're interested, let me or Ed or one of the ACT-IAC folks know. There is a joint IAAI, Intelligent Automation and AI Forum of ACT-IAC coming up in January. We are working with our sister group, the AI Working Group. And I also want to say that I'm the industry chair of the working group, but the government chair is vacant. So we are looking for candidates. If any federal folks want to volunteer, that's my email and my phone number. I also want to talk a little bit about what my company, Brilliant, has been doing, helping agencies with the automation journey. So we've been in business for a little more than a dozen years. We've had impressive growth, doing a lot of fun work with agencies, but our mission is to automate government. And how we do that is through helping them through a journey, starting with the simple, moving to the complex, so RPA, intelligent automation, and AI. And our platform is called Alice. So I won't talk too much about her. We have a lot of information on our website. But these are some of the projects that we have been working on delivering automation to the government. So we have a pilot project at Homeland Security, and I know there's some people here from DHS. It hasn't gone into production, still working its way through all the complexities, but 67% savings in both time as well as labor effort. We have a contract at Department of Energy where we're building 6 bots. We actually developed and deployed 6 bots in less than 6 months. So it's been going at a blistering pace, and one of those bots, and they're all financial process bots, one of those bots is delivering 97% labor savings, which is just fantastic. We didn't expect that either. We have a contract at the US Air Force where we're helping to automate HR processes, and they really think that they're building digital airmen. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's following the process that some of my co-panelists mentioned. I also want to point out that we as a team are focused on automation. So RPA is only one road to automation. There are other ways you can automate as well. So at the IRS, for example, we have a tool called the Metadata Automator that we built that delivers 88% automation in developing metadata, which is a mind-numbingly boring job, but it's very, very important. So there are opportunities for automation that are not strictly RPA. We have a few other examples as well, and at DHS we have a system called Brains that's running in production that delivers a whole bunch of automation as well. So I think that's why.
Thank you, Sukumar. So you might not have noticed, but he's in the Halloween spirit. He put a witch's hat on Alice. So I have one question for each panelist, then I'll turn it over to the audience for questions. So first, Elizabeth. So you're obviously passionate about RPA, and you also have audit experience. So my question is, what advice do you have for agencies to help make their RPA programs audit ready?
So I would say one word, documentation. Even in the bots that I'm help people kind of walk through, you get really excited about it and you kind of skip steps. There's a lot of good things that bots can do when it comes to audit, but there's also a lot of risk involved. And when your auditors come in to look and start doing planning and trying to figure out how they're going to do your audit, if you need to tell them way up front which pieces have been automated so that they can reach out and get the people from their organization that have expertise in bots and bring them in early on. And then they're gonna ask for documentation just like they would anything else. If a human would need an SOP to do it, then they're gonna want the equivalent of that. And you need to make sure that you've set up a structure and a governance that holds on to those documentations, because if you don't have them, it's hard stop. Like, they're gonna wanna test it, they're gonna say, do you get error reports? If you do, what do you do with them? Does management review these? Like, it's gonna be any other process. Any other process with the audit is going to be the same way if you have a bot. And if you have no documentation and no governance in place, that's just going to kind of break things down. So I would say really consider early in the process and make sure that you document every piece so that you have all of that documentation when it comes time.
So you think the auditors will test the bot itself and the reporting from it, but also all the program documentation?
Oh, yes.
The design document?
Yep, they're going to want to look at the code.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure a lot of agencies will have that experience soon, if not already. Alicia, I know you've used workshops at GSA to identify high-value opportunities, and I think those were effective. Can you tell us more about this and why you think the approach is a good one?
Yeah, so I talked about how there's like more than one way to come up with ideas. We talked about the EOE survey that we did where we got some ideas, but workshops is another thing that we've done to communicate throughout all levels of GSA about RPA, what RPA is, and how each service, division, what have you, can benefit from it. And so I think the workshop, and we've done several different workshops. Like, we've done a cross-divisional leadership workshop, We've done a workshop within a division, you know, sort of targeted. So there's a couple of different ways that you can use workshops, but I think that they're really good because when you get people together and you start talking about either what we've already done at GSA in terms of RPA, or talk about the work that they do, you know, through talking about it and them hearing an idea from a coworker or something said, it really can trigger new ideas. So I think that it really is a good way to generate ideas, just because the conversation, the brainstorming, and the collaboration that can come from a workshop, whether it's, like I said, cross-functional at a certain level, or whether it's, you know, at the division level, very focused.
A good thing about workshops is you take a systematic view of a process. If you ask people for ideas, that's fine. You might get ideas for some parts of the process, but not others. You're more likely to identify the highest value opportunities if you have a workshop, right? You won't really miss anything.
Right, and I think there's different ways you can ask the question. I think it's hard, like, do you have any bot ideas? And people might just kind of be silent. But, you know, if you can ask them, you know, what about your job do you hate the most? You know, what is the thing that you don't like to do the most? And that can sometimes generate some good ideas, because that might be the most low value or repetitive manual part of their job.
Thank you. Margaret, in your experience with RPA project management, did you ever have a moment when you said to yourself, wow, I wish I'd known that before we started? Was there any one thing like that?
Well, when I was assigned the project, I was actually told that my involvement would probably be just to help get some IDs set up for the automations or for the bots. I went to a demo and I said, oh my God, this is not just an ID that I'm going to need to help to get this to production. So my next question was, what's the road to production? And the answer was, we don't know. I said, oh, okay. So then I started working with the IT group, because this is a software development project. It's a smaller scale project, but it is a software development project. So I started working with them, with the security policy group, and determining not only what our naming convention was going to be, how we were going to set up the automations, how we would give the automations or the bot credentials. We knew that NASA was requiring their bots to take the security and privacy training and whatnot, and we discussed all that with our IT people, and they said, we're not going to do that. We're going to have them not have cards and whatnot. So we discussed all that, and so we developed a path to production. But when you start out with a pilot, you want to think it's not just a pilot, it's eventually you want to get that pilot into production, and what's that path look like? And it's really just a software development project. You need to present things to our change control board. We had to get the software or the concept of the software on our technical reference manual. We involved IT in our requirements and our product selection. So it's, when you do this, it's not, you know, just a simple project or a simple application that you're going to install on different people's laptops to develop. It's a bigger thing, project, program, and then you just need to, you know, not only just get these automations out, but you need to have a holistic view on how it's going to be developed and maintained, and who's going to do that. Are you going to use contractors? Are you going to use in-house? Are you going to develop the talent? All that in its entirety.
Sounds like you figured things out as you went along.
We did.
So maybe the thing you would have wanted in the beginning was a plan of attack.
We're still figuring it out.
Thank you. Michael, Regarding training, obviously there's a lot to learn about RPA in the government. There's possibility of development training, there's management awareness training. Does OPM have any thoughts or ideas about promoting this?
Yeah, thank you. As part of our work in the President's Management Agenda, OPM will be working with GSA to design and develop and administer a robotic process automation upskilling academy. And what this will include is not just how to approach that, but also how to develop robotic process automation bots and how to maintain them. And we're excited to say that we have funding for this as part of the upcoming budget. And we think that this will really help to accelerate adoption of robotic process automation across the federal government.
That's fantastic. Great news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sukumar, what advice would you have for agencies who want to identify intelligent automation opportunities?
So if you think of the conceptual example that I walked you through, you would have seen that the machine learning model runs on data. So data is the foundation for these machine learning models, which are nothing but fancy statistical methods. And if the data is bad, then your model is bad and it's going to predict bad things. So it becomes a GIGO problem, which is garbage in, garbage out, right? So like large billion-dollar corporations, federal agencies do have a data challenge, which is how clean is my data? Do I have data quality? And also this challenge of stovepiped data. My data exists in different stovepipes, and sometimes you can't even access it because the owner won't give you access to it. Or you might have a cybersecurity issue that it doesn't allow you to stitch data across these stovepipes. The common solution to that is to build a data warehouse. But the minute you start moving data out from one system to another, it can get corrupted, right? So with programmatic data, agencies do have a challenge with building good AI models. Then there's also the problem with data bias, et cetera, which I won't talk about. But I think the low-hanging fruit for intelligent automation is with transactional systems. So for an example, web logs from a web server, or IVR chat logs. These are all standard COTS products with standard formats. So there's lower tendency for that data to get corrupted. So I would say transactional systems, government-to-citizen interfaces are a great opportunity for automation. There's also a great opportunity for automation with semi-structured data, for example, procurement data. So you have SF-1449s, SF-30s, the propensity for badness or mislabeling of data is somewhat lowered. But having said that, I think agencies should experiment even with imperfect data and see what can we get out of some of these machine learning models and couple them with RPA bots.
I agree. For example, if you have scanned documents and AI can read 3/4 of that, you're still far better off. A person only has to look at 1/4 of the forms or the information.
Right.
Thank you. That's it for my questions. Questions from the audience for our panel.
For Alicia, GSA is an organization that primarily deals with other federal customers. When it comes to ideation for developing bots, have you started to reach out to other federal agencies as customers of your services to generate ideas for maybe what their pain points are? If so, how has that changed in terms of the process of generating? Does that change your approach at all if you've done any of that?
So I'd say the short answer is no, but I think it's a good idea.
Just one comment about that. We have had one agency come to GSA who downloads from one of our systems.
I thought that was the USDA system.
USDA system?
I think so.
Okay.
But maybe that's a
But
good
they came to
example.
us and we...
There is,
yeah.
yes. There was one agency that wanted to download bills from VCSS. So I think we had to partner with USDA to get that done, though, I thought. But I think that, I think it was FDA, and I think that other agencies may find a use for downloading BCSS reports. But maybe, that's something that GSA could also participate in. So if we downloaded a BCS report, maybe there's additional information we could add to it and present it to the customer. So, I mean, I think there are probably some ideas like that out there. That I know of, we haven't delved into that too much, but I do think it's a good point. Thank you.
Hi, my question's for Michael. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this upskilling academy and maybe give us a sense of the timeline for that?
Sure, thank you. So the funding for that is in the upcoming budget for this fiscal year, which hasn't been approved yet, but we are looking forward to that, hopefully, in the coming months. But that's something that we've already got teed up with GSA to work with. So we've already done a sort of cyber reskilling academy, so we've worked with them on that. So this is ready to go, but we've got the framework in place for how to do this, because we've done a similar thing with GSA already. So we're hopeful that sometime next year we can see this implemented. Yeah, so it's already been, it's already been approved as part of the budget, but yeah, it would have to be, voted on, signed into law, yeah.
So I don't know who wants to take this one, but different from other technologies that are pretty much like a pop into production, set and forget. I think RPA takes a lot of care and nurturing down the years that our bots mature. Like you said, you're having yours run at GSA for like 8,000 transactions or reports pulled. How are you guys architecting I don't know if it's oversight or maturity or checkpoints to make sure that months and years down the line, the bot is still serving its purpose and still operating in the way that it was intended to?
I think it depends on the automation, right? So each automation that we have in production, there's a business process owner that is reviewing the work of the automation. So for example, we have one that sends out an aging report of invoices that are late. If that doesn't come at 9:02, we know there was a problem. We also run most of our automations in test at the same time. So if the test comes out at 9:15, like it's supposed to, and production didn't come out, we know we need to go investigate. The other thing is that when the bot or the automation doesn't work, it is the business process owner's responsibility to perform the work. So it behooves them to monitor. They have to monitor that in order to make sure that it's running. The other thing that we work on is we actually are tightly integrated with our IT group. So we know when there's systems changes coming along, or like with IPP, when there's an upgrade coming along, we know that we need to do testing with our automation with the upgrades that are coming along. So it's really still the person's responsibility to make sure the work gets done.
Let me just add to that. I think it's a very good question, and we address that in our playbook as well, because agencies get gung-ho about building and deploying bots, and then what happens afterwards, right? So there is a production support function that is extremely important. We call it sustenance. So often, unless it's an attended personal bot running on your desktop, the developer can't even run the bot. It's got to be run by somebody in production, and they don't have the rights to do that. So the production supports team will usually run the bot, and secondly, the bot becomes a stakeholder in a downstream system. Because if the system changes, then the bot's going to stop or fail or error out, right? So now when they talk about releasing new versions, the team that developed these bots is a stakeholder, and they have their say too, right? And then they say, okay, tomorrow a new version is going live, and here's my bot version 2 ready to go at midnight. That's a very important question. Yeah.
Hey, Ed, real
So
quick,
Gerard, you get the last question.
well, I just want to clarify the funding Michael talked about. So the COP has actually received funding is part of the budget, and the reskilling is a subset of that funding. So we want to really get things done, but we've been able to get some funding for this year for the COP. Reskilling will be part of that. And as far as other things we can think about cross-government, that question, I mean, certainly whether it's Treasury looking at financial information or GSA acquisition information or even HR applications, one of the challenges for the practice leaders will be to try to come up with some applications that can be used government-wide. And if any of you have ideas, you see who the players are, but let us know. But we'd love to come up with some bot applications that could be used across all the agencies.
Thank you. Thanks to our panel. Great job, everyone.
Great, and thank you, Ed. Now it's time for